Lots of people travel to the big station at the end of the line. Engines from the other railway sometimes pull these trains. The engines stay the night and go home the next day. One day, Gordon was talking to one of these engines. "When I was young and green," he said, "I remember going to London. Tell me, do you know the place? The station's called King's Cross." "King's Cross?" snorted the engine. "London's Euston. Everybody knows that." "Rubbish," said Duck. "London's Paddington. I know, because I worked there. They argued till they went to sleep. They argued when they woke up. And they still argued when the other engine went away." "Phew, stupid thing," Gordon said crossly. "I've no patience." "Oh, stupid yourself," said Duck. "London's Paddington. Paddington. Do you hear?" "Stuff and nonsense," James broke in. "It was so hard to get some sleep last night because of you two. At least you both agreed on something anyway." "Oh? And what's that?" Gordon said, intrigued. "London's not Euston," James laughed. Gordon rolled away, still grumbling. "I'm sure it's King's Cross. I'll go and prove it," he said under his breath. But that was easier said than done. London lay beyond the big station at the other end of the line. Gordon had to stop there, then wait for the other engine to pick up his train. If I didn't stop, he thought, I could go to London and prove that it is King's Cross. And so, as the days went on, Gordon tried to make it past the big station. One day, he ran right through the station. Another time, he tried to start before the fireman could uncouple his coaches. He tried all sorts of tricks. But it was no good. His driver checked him every time. "Oh, this is pointless," Gordon thought sadly. "I'll never make it to London at this state." One day, he pulled the express to the station as usual. His fireman uncoupled the coaches, and he ran onto his siding to wait until it was time to go home. The coaches waited and waited and waited at the platform, but yet their engine didn't come. "That's odd," Gordon thought. "Shouldn't the engine be here on time?" Just then, a porter ran across and spoke to Gordon's driver. "Excuse me, the inspector's on the platform. He wants to see you." And so, the driver climbed down from the cab and walked over to the station. He came back in a few minutes, looking quite excited. "Hello," said the fireman. "What's happened?" "The engine for the express turned over when it was coming out of the yard." The driver pointed in the distance. They looked and saw the engine had fallen on its side. Nothing else could come in or out. So, they asked if we could take the train instead. I said we would, if the Fat Controller would agree. They telephoned and he said we could do it. How's that? "All right then," said the fireman. "We'll show them what the Fat Controller's engines can do." "Well, what are we waiting for?" said Gordon. "I will prove once and for all that it is still King's Cross." And without skipping a beat, Gordon rolled over the crossings and went back to the train. It was only a few minutes before the guard blew his whistle. Well, Gordon thought it was ages. Come on, he puffed to the coaches. Come on! "We're going to town, we're going to town," sang the coaches slowly at first, but then faster and faster. "We're going to town, we're going to town." Gordon found that going to London was a long way away. "Never mind," he said. "I like a good run to stretch my wheels." But all the same, he was glad to see London coming into sight. The next morning, as the Fat Controller came into his office, he looked at the letters on his desk. One of them had a London postmark on it, and it reminded him of Gordon. "I wonder how Gordon's getting along," he said. Just then, the station master excitedly walked into his office. "Excuse me, sir, but have you seen the news?" "Not yet. Why?" "Just come and look at this, sir." The Fat Controller took the newspaper and gasped. "Good gracious me," he said. "There's Gordon! And headlines, too. Famous engine at London station. Police called to control crowds." The Fat Controller read on, absorbed and proud. Gordon had returned the next day. The Fat Controller spoke to his driver and fireman. "I see you had a good welcome in London." "Oh, yes, we certainly did, sir. We signed autographs till our arms ached, and Gordon had his photograph taken from so many angles at once, he didn't even know which way to look anymore." "Good to hear," smiled the Fat Controller. "I expect he enjoyed himself, didn't you, Gordon?" "No, sir, I didn't." "Why ever not?" London's all wrong, answered Gordon sadly. They've changed it. It isn't King's Cross anymore. It's St. Pancras now.